Jim Rohn. In the vast and highly competitive landscape of modern philosophy, business mentorship, and personal achievement, there are countless voices offering quick formulas for success, wealth, and happiness. In an era dominated by hyperactive digital marketing and instant gratification, the pursuit of human excellence is often reduced to shallow motivational slogans and temporary emotional highs. Yet, if we trace the intellectual lineage of the entire self-improvement industry back to its modern foundations, we inevitably arrive at a singular, quiet, and deeply profound source. A man who did not rely on hyperbole, theatrical displays, or empty promises, but instead constructed a timeless framework of practical philosophy, intellectual discipline, and character development. That man was Jim Rohn. To explore the life and legacy of Jim Rohn is to examine the evolution of the American dream itself. He was not merely a public speaker, an author, or a business consultant. He was a master educator, a modern-day Stoic, and a cultural philosopher who took the complex dynamics of economic survival, human behavior, and personal responsibility and simplified them into elegant, memorable truths. In doing so, he became the premier intellectual gatekeeper of the personal development movement, establishing a structural blueprint that would not only transform the lives of millions of individuals worldwide, but would also launch and shape the careers of some of the most influential motivational figures of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Our narrative begins in September of 1930, in the agricultural community of Yakima, Washington. Emmanuel James Rohn was born into a modest, hard-working family that soon relocated to the rural farmlands of Idaho. Growing up on a farm, surrounded by the predictable, unyielding rhythms of nature, Jim was introduced to the fundamental laws of life and agriculture at an exceptionally early age. He watched his father work the soil, manage the livestock, and navigate the unpredictable shifts of the weather. On the farm, there were no shortcuts. You could not cheat the soil, you could not ignore the livestock, and you could not harvest what you had not planted. This early immersion in the laws of seed, soil, and season became the bedrock of his entire philosophical worldview. Jim was an only child, possessing an inquisitive mind and a natural talent for storytelling and observation. He attended a small, local schoolhouse where he excelled academically. Yet he found himself increasingly restless within the confines of traditional education. After graduating from high school, he enrolled in college, eager to find his place in the world. However, after only 1 year of higher education, he made a decision that would shock his family and define his early adulthood. Believing that the academic system was too disconnected from the practical realities of building a successful life, he dropped out of college. He was convinced that he could find a faster, more direct path to achievement in the open marketplace. Yet, the reality of the marketplace proved to be far more unforgiving than the young Jim Rohn had anticipated. By the age of 25, he found himself living in a state of quiet desperation. He was married, had a young family to support, and was working as a stock clerk in a department store for a meager salary. He was constantly behind on his bills, living from paycheck to paycheck, and feeling the suffocating weight of unfulfilled potential. He would later describe this period of his life as a time of profound embarrassment. He recalled a specific, humiliating moment when a Girl Scout knocked on his door selling cookies, and he had to lie to her, saying he had already bought plenty of cookies, simply because he did not have the single dollar required to purchase a box. It was during this moment of absolute financial and emotional crisis, in the mid-1950s, that Jim made a decision that would permanently alter the course of his life. He attended a lecture given by a charismatic, highly successful entrepreneur named Earl Shoaff. Shoaff was a pioneer in the direct sales industry, a man who possessed not only immense wealth, but also a magnetic, joyful philosophy of life that immediately captivated the young clerk. Jim recognized that Shoaff possessed the precise knowledge, attitude, and lifestyle that he so desperately desired for himself. Jim made up his mind to get close to this mentor. He applied for a job at Shoaff's direct sales company, Abendavita, and was hired as a distributor. Over the next 5 years, Earl Shoaff took Jim under his wing, acting as his personal guide, philosopher, and teacher. Shoaff did not merely teach Jim how to sell products, he taught him how to think. He introduced him to the revolutionary concept that financial success is not something you chase, but rather something you attract by the person you become. Shoaff famously told Jim that if he would work harder on himself than he did on his job, he could move from making a living to making a fortune. Under Shoaff's guidance, Jim began a rigorous program of self-education, reading books on philosophy, history, economics, and human behavior. He began to apply the laws of personal responsibility to his daily actions. He stopped blaming the government, his boss, the economy, or his taxes for his poor financial situation, realizing that the only variable he could truly control was his own personal value to the marketplace. He learned the art of goal setting, the power of daily discipline, and the necessity of cultivating a positive, resilient attitude. The results of this philosophical transformation were swift and extraordinary. By applying the principles his mentor had taught him, Jim rose rapidly through the ranks of the direct sales industry. He became a top producer, a master recruiter, and a highly skilled trainer of sales forces. By the age of 31, only 6 years after sitting in Earl Shoaff's lecture with empty pockets, Jim Rohn had become a self-made millionaire. He had proven, in the crucible of the free enterprise system, that his mentor's ideas were not mere theories, but highly practical, predictable laws of human achievement. However, just as Jim was reaching the pinnacle of his business success, tragedy struck. Earl Shoaff passed away at an early age, leaving Jim without his beloved guide and teacher. Yet, the seeds that Shoaff had planted in the young millionaire were destined to bear fruit on a global scale. In the early 1960s, Jim relocated to Southern California, where he continued his entrepreneurial pursuits. During this time, he was invited to speak at a local service club, where he shared his personal story of moving from a broke farm boy to a successful millionaire, outlining the simple, profound philosophies that had made his transformation possible. His presentation was an instant sensation. The members of the audience were deeply moved, not by loud theatricality, but by the quiet, dignified, and highly practical nature of his message. Word of his speaking ability spread rapidly, and soon, other clubs, organizations, and corporations began inviting him to address their members and employees. Jim realized that he had discovered a new, highly profound calling. He decided to transition from the active management of his business enterprises to a full-time career as a professional speaker and corporate philosopher. He founded Jim Rohn International, and over the next 4 decades, he would travel millions of miles around the globe, addressing over 6,000 audiences and speaking to over 4 million people across every continent. What set Jim Rohn apart from almost every other speaker of his era was his unique, inimitable delivery style and his profound commitment to substance over showmanship. He did not run across the stage, he did not shout, and he did not use high-energy music or cheap emotional tricks to manipulate his audience. Instead, he would stand calmly at a wooden podium, dressed in an immaculate, elegant suit, holding a simple notebook. He spoke in a rich, warm, baritone voice, using a slow, deliberate cadence that allowed every single word to carry its full intellectual weight. His presentations felt less like a motivational speech and more like an intimate, highly sophisticated conversation with a wise, compassionate uncle who had traveled the world and returned to share the secrets of a life well lived. He was a master of the English language, possesses a rare, poetic ability to synthesize complex philosophical concepts into short, unforgettable phrases that his audience could easily write down in their journals and remember for the rest of their lives. These phrases, which would eventually be compiled into what his followers affectionately called the treasury of quotes, became the ultimate guidelines for a generation of entrepreneurs and achievers. He famously observed that formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. He taught his audiences that we must all suffer one of 2 pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, noting that discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. He warned that if you do not design your own life plan, chances are you will fall into someone else's plan, and guess what they have planned for you? Not much. At the very core of Jim Rohn's philosophy was his seminal work on the 5 major pieces to the life puzzle. He believed that a successful, balanced life could be constructed by mastering 5 specific, interconnected areas. The first piece was philosophy, which he defined as the major determining factor in how our lives turn out. He argued that our personal philosophy is is like the set of the sail on a sailboat. The wind blows on us all, the wind of opportunity, the wind of economic change, the wind of personal tragedy. We cannot control the wind, but we can control the set of our sail. A refined, intelligent philosophy allows us to navigate any storm and reach our chosen destination. The second piece of the puzzle was attitude, which Jim described as our emotional reaction to our philosophy and our environment. He taught that we must cultivate a positive, constructive attitude toward the past, the present, the future, and toward other people. The third piece was activity, the willingness to take massive, disciplined action in the marketplace. He reminded his listeners that all the philosophy and positive attitude in the world are completely useless without daily, persistent labor. He urged his students to never mistake motion for accomplishment, demanding that they bring absolute, measurable value to every hour of work. The fourth piece was results, the objective measurement of our philosophy, attitude, and activity. Jim believed in absolute personal accountability, arguing that we must regularly examine our financial statements, our relationships, and our health to determine if our daily disciplines are producing the desired harvest. The fifth and final piece of the life puzzle was lifestyle, which he defined as the art of learning how to live well. He argued that lifestyle is not about the amount of money you spend, but about the depth of your appreciation, your culture, your relationships, and your experiences. He encouraged his followers to live a life of design, not of drift, creating a rich, elegant tapestry of memories and contributions. Through these teachings, Jim Rohn acted as the ultimate intellectual gatekeeper for the personal development industry. He refused to allow his students to rely on shallow, positive thinking alone, constantly reminding them that a positive attitude without daily discipline is merely a delusion. He insisted on the necessity of character, integrity, and ethical responsibility in the pursuit of wealth, arguing that a fortune built on deception or shortcuts is a hollow, temporary victory. He brought a sense of dignity, intellectual rigor, and classical virtue to a field that was often criticized for its commercialism and superficiality. While his direct impact on his audience was historic, Jim Rohn's most enduring, far-reaching legacy was cultivated through his role as a premier mentor and kingmaker for the leaders of the next generation. Just as Earl Shoaff had mentored him, Jim became the primary guide and teacher for some of the most influential figures in modern media and business. In the late 1970s, a young, 19-year-old man named Anthony Robbins, who was working as a low-paid janitor, attended a Jim Rohn seminar in Southern California. The experience was a profound, life-altering awakening for the young man. Tony Robbins recognized in Jim a level of clarity, power, and integrity that he wanted to replicate. He applied to work for Jim Rohn International, eventually becoming a top promoter for Jim's seminars. Under Jim's direct mentorship, Robbins learned the fundamentals of human behavior, presentation skills, and business strategy, launching a career that would make him the most famous peak performance coach on the planet. Robbins has openly and repeatedly credited Jim Rohn as the ultimate foundation of his entire career, stating that Jim was the man who shaped his mind and gave him his start. But Robbins was not the only disciple of the master. Mark Hughes, the visionary founder of Herbalife, was deeply influenced by Jim Rohn's philosophy, eventually hiring Jim to speak at his company's global conventions, where Jim's teachings became the cultural and philosophical DNA of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Legendary authors, speakers, and corporate trainers like Jack Canfield, the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, Brian Tracy, and Darren Hardy, the former publisher of Success magazine, all spent decades studying at the feet of Jim Rohn, treating his recorded lectures and books as the holy grail of personal achievement. Through these disciples, Jim's ideas were multiplied, adapted, and delivered to hundreds of millions of people who may have never even heard his name, but whose daily lives are governed by his concepts. As the world crossed into the 21st century, Jim's physical energy began to slow, yet his commitment to his philosophy remained absolute. He continued to write, to record, and to address select audiences, his voice growing even richer, warmer, and more reflective with age. He watched as the digital revolution began to transform how information was shared, welcoming the opportunity to reach a new, global audience of young internet users who were discovering his classic lectures through audio and video platforms. He remained a comforting, steady anchor of wisdom in a rapidly changing, increasingly chaotic world, reminding his followers that while technology changes, the fundamental laws of human nature, discipline, and achievement remain completely constant. In December of 2009, Jim Rohn passed away in West Hills, California, leaving behind a monumental legacy that continues to grow in influence with every passing year. His passing was marked by tributes from around the world, with captains of industry, political leaders, and spiritual teachers uniting to honor a man who had spent his life helping others unlock the full potential of their own humanity. Today, nearly 2 decades after his physical departure, Jim Rohn's voice remains a vital, active presence in the global cultural conversation. His books, including the 5 major pieces to the life puzzle, 7 strategies for wealth and happiness, and Seasons of Life, remain international bestsellers, translated into dozens of languages. His recorded seminars are played daily in offices, homes, and cars around the globe, acting as a constant source of mental nutrition, clarity, and direction for a new generation of entrepreneurs, students, and leaders. Every time a young entrepreneur sits down to write out their 10-year goals, they are utilizing the precise system Jim Rohn popularized. Every time a corporate leader encourages their team to take personal responsibility for their results, they are echoing the philosophy he championed. Every time a modern motivational speaker stands on a stage and warns their audience that they must choose between the pain of discipline and the pain of regret, they are quoting the master. Jim Rohn was the ultimate modern stoic, a visionary educator who elevated the study of human achievement to its rightful place as a noble, dignified, and deeply spiritual pursuit. He took the timeless wisdom of the ages and organized it into a highly practical, elegant system of daily disciplines that anyone, from a broke farm boy to a corporate executive, could use to design a life of wealth, influence, and profound contribution. He remains the eternal father of personal development, the architect of self-education, and an enduring monument to the majestic beauty of a life lived in harmony with the laws of nature. If you enjoyed this content, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, thanks for watching.